Hey there, and welcome to the DFS Build NBA edition. I'm Kevin Roberts, joined with Taylor Smith, and we are getting together to go over the DraftKings main slate. Yesterday could have been a ton of fun if you were on Peyton Pritchard and Derek White. We did give them a shout when we did our core plays. They were not in the core plays, but we still had good core plays overall. It's like Spencer Dinwiddie with 28. It's not going to kill you. Jaylen Brown, Jalen Williams, they were good, and Kyle Filipowski. So if you want core plays leading into the slate, you can go visit our Patreon and get those. We also offer night slate picks, FanDuel core plays, and some other things too. So go check it out. If you want a little bit of free advice, you can obviously continue watching this video, or you can come join our Discord, which is totally free. So do those things if you want a little extra help building your lineups. If anything we do here helps you out, please like this video and also consider subscribing to the channel. It will get you alerted to future videos just like this, and it helps us out quite a bit as well. All right, let's get to it. The way we do it, we go position by position, looking over the best plays. And at point guard right now, as you would expect, Luka Doncic leads the way with a 55-point fantasy projection, and he's not very owned because there are other options here. So right behind him is Trae Young, 9.8K. You save 1.4 thousand here, get a really good play against the Pacers. And then right behind him is Tyrese Halliburton at 8.8K. Currently questionable, but all three of these guys look really, really good. Luka's super expensive, but fading Luka never feels good. Where are you going right now up top at point guard?
Probably none of them. If Tatum is in, I think Tatum's the best spend on the slate if he plays, just because Boston is without several other starters and regulars, and potentially more with Hauser questionable. So Tatum's kind of the spend I like right now, but that could change obviously if he doesn't play. And then I'm more inclined to pay all the way up for Luka. The Knicks haven't been exactly a stalwart defensively. It's Luka. He's come back kind of into his own after struggling to adapt to his new team through the first few games. You can argue he's still underpriced. I like Halliburton and Trae. I'll probably be around the field on Halliburton. I don't know if I'll get to Trae. He's not really popping necessarily in my personal projections, but certainly a good play, just kind of expensive, and I think you can find cheaper stuff that looks a bit better.
Yeah, you can certainly make the argument to just go up to Luka over Trae, who's almost 10K, or just drop 1,000 down to Halliburton and also other guys that we'll talk about pretty quickly here. I mean, Trae Young, if not owned, I'm interested. Like I've said before, like in Discord and probably in videos, Trae burns me every time, but that's not a really good reason to not play him in a smash spot. Best game DFS environment of the slate. And also last time he played the Pacers, he had 68 fantasy points. So like, it all looks good for Trae. And then if you can also get him, he has the second best projection at the position, and right now projecting for under 8% ownership. I would bet the over on that. But the point is, all these guys look good. I am a little bit afraid of fading Luka, but right now I'm probably in the Trae Halliburton range. Like you said, if Tatum doesn't play, I agree Tatum is a really good spend on this slate as well. That said, there's other point guard options here. Ahmed Thompson going up against the Pels. He looks good at 8.7K. He is a direct pivot off of Halliburton. He's going to probably have about half the ownership. There is still Jalen Brunson. There is still Stephen Curry. I don't think those guys are priority spends on this slate, given everybody else that is here. But if Tyrese is out, all of a sudden those guys look a little bit better and they get a little bit more steam. Is there anybody else up top here that you feel compelled to play beyond, like, obviously 7.1K Derek White? I mean, he seems like a lock at this point.
Pretty close to a lock. I don't know if he's a full lock because he is over 7K, but certainly an awesome play. One of the better plays at the position. I like Austin Reeves a bit. He's going to be back tonight. I don't really think he'll be limited. I think he missed 2 games or something like that. Price has come down to 7.4 on DK, which is pretty nice. He's been plenty productive, even with LeBron and Luka both in there. Like I said, the Knicks are not really stopping teams consistently this season. So I do like Reeves if he's going to be low owned in the last game of the night. I think he's a pretty sneaky play. Could see like sub 10% ownership. If Giddey plays, I'm okay with it. Like, the matchup sucks, but his role with Vooch and Levine gone is so massive that I think he still offers a ceiling. Not my favorite play from the Bulls. We'll get to him in a bit, but still playable, I think, in tournaments. Dyson Daniels, I think, always looks pretty good. Pacey game in general, high total. Going to be out there defending Halliburton, so I think that's a good spot for him pretty much every night. He's a good play, it seems. And then Quentin Grimes is 6,100. He started at point guard the other night with Maxey out. Maxey's out again. Played huge minutes. Boston's shorthanded, so it's not necessarily the scary matchup it usually is for Philly. They just need people out there who can play, and they're going to give Grimes a chance to play, new player on the team and all that. If George is out, maybe they have a harder time keeping it close, but his role is going to be huge either way. And at 6'1", I still think he's kind of an underpay.
Yeah, I don't disagree with anything you said there. I'll just touch on the Bulls thing because obviously people are going to look at the Magic side. You know, Bulls play fast, they don't defend. It's in Orlando. Like everything looks good for the Bulls, for the Magic guys. Bulls are going to get overlooked here. Like Giddey's price is up there for this matchup. It doesn't like feel optimal, but the role is massive. Just a few games ago, they let Curry go for 50 against the Raptors. Recently, RJ Barrett had a 21, 9, and 8 line. Scotty Barnes had 17, 13, 5. Like, even though the setting is not really what you want usually, for whatever reason, like it's been working against the Magic lately. So I don't mind Giddey. I really don't mind that game like I normally would. Normally I'm against a slow-paced game with Orlando's capable defense. They're not as scary without Jalen Suggs. We know that. So I don't know. I think Giddey is pretty interesting. I like that call, and I think the Bulls in general and a game stack, I think it's a little bit sneaky on this slate. That said, like Pritchard, Derek White, that's just the easy, obvious way to start off your build. I do agree that if you're going to fade one, it would be Derek White due to price. It's reasonably unlikely, especially if Tatum plays, that both of those guys go off again. Pritchard is just so cheap still at 5.5 that I don't even care about that risk.
And he's shooting guard eligible. Like it's very hard to get away from Pritchard. I don't.
Yeah, I think Pritchard is like majorly good chalk. I wouldn't say Derek White's bad chalk, but at 7.1K, if Tatum is in, I think you can comfortably get away from Derek White.
There's a lot more risk. Like Pritchard can't, like he can fail, I guess, but for 5.5, it's a lot harder for him to fail than it is for White at 7.1. Like you really need White to score 40 plus. For Pritchard, like 30 plus is probably not what you want, but it should be around his floor.
Yeah, but at that price, though, even if he technically fails and gets you like 25 or something, like you could survive that, especially since he's chalky. Chalky Derek White at 7.1K getting you 20 to 25 would be possibly a death sentence. So I just think that's something important to note. If Tatum's out, it's just like I'm locking them both and not even thinking about it. I like the Quentin Grimes call. Obviously, Maxey's out. Pod's okay at 5.8K. Not super excited about anybody else down here. Cole Anthony, though, 5K flat against the Bulls. He's questionable. He was at shoot around. If he's in with Jalen Suggs jettisoned to the sun forever, I think he's a good value. Nothing wrong with him. And, of course, if Halliburton is indeed out, we can look at TJ McConnell and Andrew Nembhard. Nembhard's been playing monster minutes. We can look at him anyways.
Yeah, he's been benefiting from Mathurin out, and Mathurin's questionable. So if he's in, if they're both in, then Nembhard's like kind of gonna take a ding.
For sure.
We just got Paul George ruled out, so that makes me
feel. We're off to a good start, baby. Quentin Grimes, 6.1.
Yeah, Grimes is a really good play. He already was, but he's probably going to be.
No, now he's an amazing
play.
Cole
Anthony thing is like Cole Anthony has chalk. It's like the Robbie Ray thing, like we always talk about. Like if he's chalk, you fade him. If he's not, you play him. I don't know if he'll be chalk because we do have Pritchard in that range now, and Pajemski a little bit more expensive and awesome play. So, if Anthony's Q tag leads to low ownership, they're still playing the Bulls. He still has massive payout potential. So I do think he's certainly playable.
Absolutely. Obviously, first he has to play, and then we can just check that ownership. I don't want to be eating like chalk left and right. I don't mind eating the Boston chalk. I don't mind going after Grimes and Oubre because the usage is going to be massive. And if we're getting shares to the Boston game, it just makes sense. Let's stack that game up a little bit and hope it goes our way. But it's tough to completely fade Magic guys too. One other one to note would be, I guess if Cole isn't in, we could consider Corey Joseph at 3.9K. He did play 26 minutes. He was not a snowflake in the game when he started there, and they only gave Anthony Black 15 minutes. So all those things are worth noting. Not saying Corey would be a core play or he'd be reliable at all, but he'd be in play for sure.
Yep.
All right. So over to shooting guard, Derek White leads the way. This is not a very good position. This is one reason why I'm very, very excited about guys like Nembhard and Cole and Pritchard. The most I really want to spend here is Derek White. He's the best projecting guy. I don't mind pivoting to Jalen Green at 7.3K. I just think if it's between those two guys, I'm fine with just eating the chalk with Derek White. If you want to get different, Jalen looks good against the Pels for sure. He does do well, on the fast break. Obviously, he can get hot from outside. The Pels are an amazing matchup. And he also is not that expensive at 7.3. Pritchard here, obviously, too. Quentin Grimes, like you said, 6.1. I think I'm missing somebody that I really like, but you can just take it over and kind of highlight anybody that we haven't touched on that you like at shooting guard.
Yeah, I mean, it's obviously White, and then you're pivoting if you're doing anything else, or Pritchard, of course, or Grimes now. Like, I think he's just a great play at 6-1. I do like the Jalen Green thing. I don't mind Reeves, like I talked about, Dyson Daniels, Josh Giddey. All these guys are in the same range. Well, Giddey's point guard only, my bad. But the others all shooting guard eligible, I believe. So plenty to like. Really, anyone you're not playing at point guard is fine at shooting guard. Trey Murphy, I guess, is okay. Don't love the matchup, though. We could have value, like with Chicago again. They have a bunch of guys who are questionable and Vooch out and stuff, but not in love with that.
I didn't mention Trey Jones. That's in play if Giddey and Lonzo are out again for sure.
And Taylor Horton Tucker, I don't know what his eligibility is. He is shooting guard, small forward, and he's only 4,100. So
that's not bad.
No, the matchup's horrible. So if he's going to be super popular, it's worth fading. But he is a good per minute guy, so I think it's okay. In the mid range, I don't mind Karis LeVert. Playing pretty well for Atlanta. That Indiana-Atlanta game is the best game environment to target on the slate. He's shown ceiling. The minutes are pretty safe. I think he's a decent enough value play.
I don't mind him. I think he's okay. Don't think he's gonna be super necessary, but the fact that it's going the way it is right now would probably give him a good chance of being pretty contrarian. And at that price in that game, that's interesting for sure. I thought there was somebody else at shooting guard that I was going to highlight, but I was wrong. So moving on to small forward, Jason Tatum leads the way with a 52-point fantasy projection. LeBron's right behind him. They are similarly priced. Everything about them is very similar. So you could just go away from the Tatum chalk if you wanted to and just lean on White and Cornette and Pritchard and then play LeBron to get different. Don't see why you really have to, especially with Luka kind of siphoning LeBron's upside. But LeBron is fine and Tatum looks really good. If Tatum is out, then obviously we already talked about that. But honestly, the best play here, in my opinion, is Franz Wagner. Dollar for dollar. Franz Wagner takes it inside a lot more than I thought he did. Like I went and looked at the shot charts for some of these guys today, and I was surprised at just how much he goes inside. He's a great shooter, but he takes it in the paint a ton. And guess what? The Bulls are really, really bad inside. So I think he could do a lot more damage. And also, anytime a star goes off, when it's like these two guys like teaming up all the time, it just makes sense that maybe the next game the other guy might take his turn. And I think that could be something to consider here with Wagner at 8.6K.
Yeah, I'm not really on him. I understand the matchup is as good as it gets, but just kind of prioritizing other stuff like Tatum at the high end looks better to me. So I'm just kind of paying up for him instead. I don't mind Zion either. Houston's not a good matchup, but his role is insane. He played 31 minutes a few games ago. He has that potential. His usage is like around 40%, and the game has a pretty tight spread. So if Zion's going to be overlooked, I really think he's a pretty amazing tournament play on this slate, as usual. Amen Thompson also, like I'm not playing him at all at point guard. I'm playing him pretty much exclusively at small forward because small forward sucks in relation to point guard. So getting to that, and then cheap stuff, you can play 3 different Hawks here. I mentioned LeVert, Reese Shea, George Niang. None of them are comfortable values, but they all look okay against Indiana. And then we just got some Bulls news with Lonzo Ball out and Nikola Vucevic officially out. So no word on Kevin Huerter, but if Kevin Huerter plays, he's cheap. He's been playing more minutes lately. I think he's a decent cheap play there.
Yeah. Sure. Last time we touted Kevin Huerter, it worked out, so why not, right? Not really a good matchup, though. The only other guy I'll mention is Kelly Oubre, 6.2K. You can use him at small forward, which is nice. You can pair him with Grimes or leverage the Grimes ownership if he ends up being chalky. Right now, Oubre is not coming as chalk, but with no Paul George or Maxey or Embiid, these guys look freaking awesome. And especially since we're already on Boston, I have no issue with playing both of those dudes. Now, with this happening, though, what Philly value should we be looking at? Obviously, we have a starting lineup for sure of Oubre, Grimes, Yabu, and Drummond. Who's the fifth guy in, and what other Philly value should be on our radar?
I'm assuming it would be Edwards as the fifth one, but
I'll pull it up.
not a very fun play. 4K flat. I think he's okay. The minute should be secure enough. If it's Ricky Council instead, he's 3K. That would be a lot more interesting.
Yeah.
Than 4K Edwards, but
I'd like that.
it seems like Edwards is ahead of him on the depth chart. So
is Edwards questionable? Looks like he is with an ankle.
Yeah, he is. So could
So
be Lonnie
if he's
Walker, could be Ricky Council.
Yeah. I mean, Lonnie is projecting for 22 minutes anyway. So Lonnie, I think, is an okay punt at 3.4. But honestly, I'd probably just ride with who starts there. Edwards is fine at 4K, but I would love to get major savings here with Lonnie or Council if we can. All right, let's get back to where we were at small forward. I think that was it for me on Oubre. Anybody else you want to touch on? You want to move it along?
Hauser's questionable, but if he's in, he played 31 last night. He didn't do anything with those minutes, but he's going to play the minutes if he's in. So he's an okay value at under 4K.
Okay, well, hold on a second. Let's stop at Boston there and look at. So if he doesn't play, if he plays, yeah, he should push for 30 minutes. He can, if he gets going. I mean, he didn't make his shots yesterday, but we know he can. So I don't hate him as a value at 3.8 if he's in. If he's not in, we'd be looking at probably Torrey Craig or Jordan Walsh. Any interest there if those guys are going to push for 30 minutes?
Yeah. Walsh played 20 last night, so he might be the top candidate to see more if Hauser's out or anyway.
3K flat, man. I mean, they're just playing the same role. But... Well, he can shoot, so like he's doing the same thing Hauser would do.
Yeah, I just don't have a lot of faith, but he is 3K. Craig is a bit better per minute, but not a great player either, and he seems kind of on the fringes of the rotation. Like, they're going to have to get pretty deep into this stuff. Like Baylor Shireman and Drew Peterson and guys like that might be on the rotation. So it's kind of a guessing game. Like if Walsh starts, I guess if Tatum is out, I'd be more interested. I don't think the Hauser thing really moves the needle as far as like, oh, I'm going to play Walsh now with Tatum and Pritchard and Derek White taking all the usage. But if Tatum is out, then guys like that might get more interesting because it's a lot of usage that's going out of the lineup.
100% agreed. All right, let's move it along back to where we were, going over to power forward, I think, right? Jason Tatum's there, LeBron's there, Banchero is there. I think I'm leaning Wagner, like I said, but I have no problem with Banchero. It's a great matchup. He's 8.9K. He's coming off a massive game, 73 fantasy points. I mean, he is very up and down. I mean, just look at his game log. He does have a massive ceiling when he's clicking. I think it's going to lean Wagner's way, but I don't have an issue with Banchero. You mentioned Zion before. I'm fine with Zion and GPPs. The price is getting up there and the minutes are not, so I'm not super excited about it. I think I'd prefer Banchero or I'd prefer going up to Tatum or James, but that's fine. Siakam looks like a pretty good value here in the best game environment of the night. 7.5K against the Hawks. I do not mind that at all. Looks like he's going to get some ownership, and rightfully so. I'm not getting to him right now, but good price, good matchup. I'm fine with it. There's a lot to like here, honestly. Power forward's pretty loaded from top to bottom. There's a lot of values too. Once you highlight, I think you kind of already did, but why don't you like highlight your top play here, maybe beyond Tatum?
It's going to be Zion. I think Siakam's okay. Like if Halliburton's out, he'll get a big boost. The issue with Siakam generally is that he doesn't usually offer a huge ceiling. Like he's going to get you 35 to 38, which is fine, but it's not really winning you anything if he gets that. If he's chalk, I don't mind being under on that on this slate. Otherwise, I think the Rockets are a pretty good source of value. Tari Eason, 5,500. No Van Vliet should start. Pelicans are an awesome matchup for what he does well. So I think he's a pretty amazing value. Dylan Brooks is okay. Never love it. Jabari Smith on FanDuel is like 4.9. So I think he's a strong play over there, and less so on DK where he's 5.8 or something like that. So dollar for dollar, I think Tari's my favorite power forward. And then it's a lot of the same. I guess Yabusele is worth the mention. He's been playing huge minutes. Now there's no George, no Maxey, no George or Embiid, no Jared McCain. Like there's a ton of usage to go around for Philly. I don't generally love playing Yabusele at all, but he's fine. He's cheap. Boston not as imposing like we talked about. That's really it. Ricochet, like I talked about, Niang is fine, but hopefully better value will open up.
I don't know. I mean, I like the value as it stands. I'm with you. Tari looks good at 5.5. I think I prefer Yabu at 5.1 just because he's going to get more minutes. Should get a usage bump with no PG-13. Matchup against Boston isn't as scary as it normally would be. So I don't mind him. Like, it feels gross, but I'm starting to work towards stacking this game up quite a bit. I just might pick my spots a little bit depending on like where the ownership lies. If everybody's on Sixers and Celtics, then maybe I'll make some decisions. And, Yabu might be one of the first guys that I start getting underweight on. I'll also mention Matas Bazelis just because he continues to be cheap. They have some bodies out still. Obviously, Vooch is the big one, 5.3K. Not a good matchup, but he should get 30-plus minutes here. And if the game does blow out, he probably has a decent chance of actually finishing it. And then, of course, some of those same guys we talked about, Boston and Philly, bigs, the small forwards, some of them are also power forward eligible. So just keep an eye on that situation. All right, over at center, Şengün looks good. 46-point fantasy projection, 9.4K. The price feels a little bit much, but he's coming off a pretty big game, I believe. Yep, 44 and 50 in his last two games. We know he has the ceiling. When everybody's healthy, he doesn't have quite as much upside, but the Pels are a very good matchup. I'm not getting there, but I don't mind it. I think if I was going to pay at center, it's going to be Cat. Cat's been very quiet lately, but he's only $500 more and just has been the better DFS player on the year. Plus, just a really big game against the Lakers. By the way, I don't know. I'm starting to believe in the Lakers defensively here. They're like number one in like a ton of categories. They've been very, very good for a while now defensively. So I'm not eager to play either of these guys. I think center is just loaded with value. Obviously, you have Kornet, and then you also have Onyeka and Miles, even Wendell Carter. I mean, all these guys look good. Before the Kornet news, I loved Onyeka. He shoots like 80% of his shots inside, and the Pacers are dead last, I think, or close to dead last in points in the paint allowed. So I love Onyeka. If I had to pick two centers tonight, it would be Onyeka and Kornet.
Yeah, there are others that are okay. Like Nick Claxton's cheap, 5,500. Don't hate that value. Draymond on the other side of that game is okay. Probably more of a forward play, but he shows occasional ceiling. Even with Jimmy there, he's been pretty good. Keita as the backup to Kornet. Wouldn't play them together. They are both cheap enough to where I guess you could do that. I just wouldn't do it personally. Eating up both center spots. I think a really good tournament play is Zach Collins at 6,500 for Chicago. Like missing tons of bodies. Lonzo and Vooch officially out, like we talked about. If Giddey's out, that's even more playmaking missing from the lineup. So, like Orlando's a tough matchup, like we talked about, but Collins just has a huge ceiling. No one's going to play him at his kind of heightened salary here, 6,500, but perfectly fine with it. It's like the Valanciunas thing last night. Like, yeah, he's expensive relative to where he normally is, but is he too expensive for the role? And I would say probably not. So still fine with that. Jackson Hayes, still cheap, still playing good minutes as the starter for the Lakers in the middle. Low ownership should be decent enough. Jalen Smith, just a per minute dynamo as the backup to Collins is okay. I agree about a Conwu. And, Wendell Carter is kind of the Siakam of centers. There's not really a ceiling there, but Chicago is dead last in points in the paint allowed. So good spot for all those Orlando guys.
Yeah, I mean, if he wasn't facing Orlando, Zach Collins would be popping quite a bit here. Obviously, Vooch is officially out. Some other guys are questionable. The only thing I don't like about Collins is the matchup. Like, the price is not bad for the player who he's been lately. He's been crushing, and he's got good usage. I think that's a great call. In my Reddit breakdown this morning, he was one of my favorite plays as far as, like, GPPs are concerned. Like, I was going in Miles and Onyeka. Those are the guys I really, really like. But, boy, Zach Collins looks really interesting for GPPs. All right. Let's wrap it up with our overall strategy for the slate and our flag plant of the night.
Yeah, a lot of Celtics. I'm considering a max 4 just because they're so shorthanded, especially if Tatum is out, then you're really getting into that stuff. Ideally 3, though. I think Pritchard, Tatum, and then, White or Kornet would be the third if Tatum is in. And then my flag plan, I guess I'll go with Grimes. there might be sticker shock with the price, and the matchup against Boston. But like we said, Boston's not as imposing without half the rotation. Grimes has a huge role. He's going to be the point guard effectively. He should lead the team in usage as well. So I still think he has a sky high ceiling, even at kind of max price here.
Yeah, I like him a lot. I'll go a couple here. It depends on ownership though. Like right now, Franz Wagner's carrying ownership. If a lot of this stuff changes that and he is like low owned, I'm very into Franz Wagner at that price. I prefer him to Banchero. I think he looks just awesome tonight. If he's really chalky, I don't mind going away from him and then going up against Luka, and that's another flag plant. Like it doesn't take much to really sell Luka here, but if Luka's going to really be like 20% owned or less, I really like ending the night with Luka. And the other one's Onyeka. I already talked about him. Point is, he's getting a little bit of ownership right now, but with the Cornet stuff and everything opening up, I think we could start getting slowly away from Onyeka being owned on this slate, and I don't want to do that. I think Cornet is not really that bad of a fade. Really, technically, just because, especially if Tatum's in, like he's not going to have like massive usage. They're still going to use Kata to a degree. I want to play him in most of my lineups. I'll pair him with Onyeka, but I think if you wanted to get away from somebody a little bit, it would be him. As far as like chalky options that are opening up, and then we can maybe look at Zach Collins and some of these other guys that you've been that you were talking about earlier. All right, that will do it for us. Hopefully, this helps you out. If it does, hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and come join us in Discord. Thanks for watching, and good luck.